Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to UI UX Design. I am your SIG design lead, Mary Delos Reyes. Um, I'll be like going back and forth. I have like my laptop here and my PC in front of me, which I'm sharing my slides and I'm using my um, headset as a mic. And I don't have a webcam in my PC, so I'm using my Mac for the webcam. So that's why I'm like angled that way. Sorry. But here you go. I'll be introducing you guys to UI UX and let's just get started and about me. Okay, who is your host? I'm Mary. Nice to meet you. I am the SIG design lead at ACM. I am the front end lead and event coordinator for Hack Merced. I'm also a second year majoring in CSC. You can contact me at Created Mary in any design platform. That includes social media. If you guys want to connect and design and talk about anything design related. Okay, so what is UI UX design? Let's go with the basic. What's UI UX stands for? UI is user interface. So when I think of user interface, I think of the design, the colors, the fonts, typography, everything related to design and how it looks, right? And UX stands for user experience. So it's all about the experience of the user, literally what it stands for. And the metaphor is UI is how good the car looks, and UX is how good you feel like driving it. Another one is UI is her Tinder profile, and UX is the date. um, when it comes to user experience, it's a whole process, and inside that is the user interface. There's many puzzle and process that comes with UI UX, and all it does is improving lives, including design systems also. But everything is refers to the user. Everything goes back to the user. So who is your target audience when it comes to like age, gender, language, device, finger size, and a lot more. So you have to think about that when you're thinking about your audience or your users or your customers. Anything that relates to who you're catering for on your product. Okay. So who practices UI UX? It's really like an emerging field. Like it becomes booming in like the last few years. And this is like the list of design um, field. If you guys are really interested and wanna do a career in UI UX. There's also front end and full stack that's not in this list that also involves with UI UX. Well, just like a little bit. Uh, okay. So we'll go touch base on like the UI first before we go to the whole process of UX and what step is the UI when it comes to UX, right? So UI, like I said, is the user interface, and it's all about accessibility and efficiency and just making everything easier for the designers when using your design, right? It's one part of the puzzle in the UX process. Um, like I said, it was typography and includes white space, negative space, colors, styling, fonts, and layout. We'll go deep dive into details about all of those stuff in the next slides. And one of the most important is the usability tests, readability, and responsiveness. That's all ties back to user interface. And this is just an example, this oval of like typography, I guess. It's like the white space, the negative space, the colors, the fonts, the sizes, everything ties to UI. Okay, so what is typeface? This is the anatomy of a typeface. Um, let's touch on the baseline first. What is the baseline? This is where your text, like touch, it's where your text relies on. And the serif, what is the serif? It's just like a little stroke at the end, which makes that traditional look. And it ties to, like, you know, Times New Roman. That's one of the example people use. X height, it's the from the baseline to the height of the small font. Cap height would be all the way to the capital letters. And then letter spacing, it is what it stands for, so it's the letter space. And then the stem of a letter, the stroke, the sender is below the baseline, and the ascender is above the baseline, so above the uppercase, so everything else. And aperture is the corner of your letter and the outside space, so it looks like this. And the leading would be from a baseline to another, so from the end to another baseline. So that's just some examples of anatomy of a typeface, and there's much more that you guys can learn, but this is just one of the most important ones, I think, when it comes to typeface. Okay, so when it comes to typography, a clear interface helps prevent user errors, right? So any design you create should help prevent user errors. How should we do that? One of the stuff we can do is white space and negative space. It's basically the same thing, but they improve visual hierarchy. So, like, look at this. You got mail. It's like bolded. It's the title. I got a mail, right? It's letting the user know, hey, you got a mail. It's like a notification. And it focuses on important aspect of the design and just finding the right balance. And when you keep that up with your project or any of your mobile or web application, and you keep that up, that's being consistent. And that's really, really good when it comes to design. It's just simple and it focuses on the important aspects. So let's see here. You got a mail and they input a white space to give that more of like a right balance. And especially when it comes to mobile. So let's say my thumb, when you long press on a button, what if you accidentally long press on the text? It'll like copy and paste, right? But having that white space gives that button to relax on that. And yeah, it's much better. Okay. And the more negative space, like it says here in the picture, it more emphasizes the section. So it'll show in this examples. And that's plainly what white space and negative space is, just proving that important aspect of your design and just being consistent. Okay, now let's go into color theory. Color is the power which directly impacts the soul. It ties back to accessibility. You need that in your user experience and your UI design. So when it comes to color theory, that's just ties back to the basics, like the basic of any design. When you go to a design class, you're gonna learn this. You learn hues, values, saturations, and why is it important in UI? It ties to user perception and emotional impact. So when you look at this color theory, look at each color and how they define in like emotion. So when I think of yellow, I think of like happy, right? And when you're doing your brand or you're working on a project, you should take note of like the colors you put in your brand and match whoever your target audience is. So like, for example, I want to create a mobile app for kids. They like bright color stuff. They're like happy, probably put on yellow and like rainbow color. But when it comes to colors and professional and simplicity, it should stay with like 2 or 3 colors to match with a brand. So like ACM, think of ACM, I think of like blue. And I'd be staying in that color, blue, white, yellow, right? And then when if they're I'm creating an ACM website, I'll be staying with those colors because that's what the brand is. And when you're creating your project, do not use like pure black or pure like red because it'll take note of the eye straining. So it really hurts the eye when you have those bright colors like pure red, and just don't do it. Also, here is an example of a bad shadow and a good shadow. I used to do this a lot, like the bad shadow when I started working on like neuromorphism trend. But I learned this is the better one, and it's just like it gives that subtle look, but defined, right? This used to be in the early 2000s trend, but we're now in 2021, and this is the upcoming trend. I think another trend would be like glass morphism, but I think just stay away from that. Is if you're gonna use it in like maybe cards, like business cards, to look more professional. But I mostly see it in like iOS application, like mobile apps for Apple, because they have to have that specific background to show that glass look, and it's not really good for everyone. Okay. Now let's go talk about fonts. Text needs to breathe. Like I said, that's when it comes to letter spacing, line height, and staying with your 1 or 2 fonts to be consistent. So when you're talking about a brand like ACM, they have a specific font, and you can just Google ACM brand, and it'll give you a whole like packet, like it's a packet, like whole pages of like pure design of what ACM brand is, like their colors, what font they use in the logo. And they have multiple logos for like dark mode, light mode, and they are consistent with their fonts. And when you guys are creating your projects, always stays with 1 to 3 fonts. So like your heading, your subheading, and your regular text. And don't have it like a similar font, like same family, because it looked the same, right? And always use readable font, please. Including like serif, which has traditional and have like that stroke in the end. And I gave an example, it's like the Times New Roman, which people use for like essays. Open Sans is really popular since it's for both print and web. It's created by Google, and this is like the recommended code for headers and regular text. Sans serif is the modernized serif. It just looks clean. They don't have that little stroke in the end. And yeah, never combine 2 similar fonts. use fewer fonts to keep the harmony, to be consistent. Now let's talk about layout. Layout is how you define how the users how to use your interface. So like how you're gonna organize the contents you want to put in your project or your mobile application, any of your product. When you think about this, there are direct and indirect interactions. What kind of content do you want people, the users or the customers to use? Like tapping a button, dragging and dropping an item with a fingertip, typing into a form field, key commands, all those interactions. Like you gotta think about like interactive prototype, but we'll talk about prototyping, wireframing later on in UX, and just talk about like the layout. Layout has to work hand in hand. Meaning like in the environment and the situation of where the user is, it can change the design. So look at this picture. You see how in the situation like a phone, like even if they're like a little bit up, they're reachable. It's like what if your submit button, instead of it's in the down low, like it's usually is, what if it's in the very top, right? That's very bad user experience because the user has to go like reach for that button. When it's like just easier to have that regular familiar stuff that they can press to. So just think about that when you're organizing your layout, your contents, and anything in your design. Okay, now we talk about fonts, text, colors, layout. Now we should talk about of how you should think about the important elements of UI. When you're creating your design and user ignore designs that ignores users, that's what it says there, or people. So keeping up with these stuff, being consistent, being convenient, and having creating an easy to use application is good for the user. So having that navigational and informational components and containers, like for example, this on the right of the picture, you see there's an error, right? It's a login page. I put in my email. I'm the user. I'm putting my email. I put in my password. I got it wrong, right? And it says error. Let's look at this first picture first. How do I know what I did wrong? Like, did I forget my password, or did I forget my email? I don't know. And where's the link that I can go back and change my password if I forgot it? And that's why having that informational stuff, like informational component, like telling the user what happened, you can't go into their site or your site, is because this is the error. It gives you the information, hey, your password is incorrect. It's telling me, hey, it's your password, not your email, your password that's incorrect. And if you don't remember it, here's the link to change it. And that's the great example of a good user experience, is letting me know, oh, I forgot my password. I got it wrong. Now you gave me a link to change it. That's good. So that's the correct way to do an informational component. Now, let's go with usability. Usability is to be consistent, familiar, and engaging, and just helping that, like it says, navigational and functionality of a design. So let's look at this second picture. It's another login. What's wrong with it? So this is what's wrong. And this is the correct design. Um, People can distinguish between what is login, what's sign up, and what's forgot password. Instead of having that same design, it looks, it's like that Google redesign icon that they did recently. It was like it was all colors, the same colors, just different what do you call this? Different sizes or different shapes, but it's still the same colors. And some people can't distinguish those. And you have to cater for those users if you want them to use your application, use your product, right? So helping them distinguish between what's login, what's sign up, and what's forgot password helps the user know and navigate easily. And that's where usability testing comes into place and where user experience comes into place. It's a whole process, and I'll talk more about it. But now we will talk about it. um, we ended user interface. Now we're talking about UX. So what is UX? It's user experience, and it's a whole dedicated, like a lot of careers for this topic. And it's all about functionality. And it's the whole process. There's researching, there's brainstorming, implementing, and reporting. And inside that, you see in the implement side, that's where the UI comes in. And let's talk dig dive of what research is. So what is research and user experience? So in the first step, when you're thinking about user UX research is understanding, conducting user interviews to identify their requirements. So let's say you take note of your target audience. Now you have to conduct user interviews. You have to study these people to know what how would they navigate in applications, or how would it cater for them to be like to give them the best product, right? And that's where ethnography comes into place. Ethnography is just studying culture, studying people, and it's just researching, plain researching. And user personas is representing a typical user to identify their goals, their frustration. So let's say old person, you're catering for, like, you're building an app, right? And the target audience is old people, and you have to take note of their sickness. What's usually uh the common thing that happens when you grow old is like losing like your eyesight, right? That's where most people wear glasses when they get older. And you have to put that in your goal and defining their frustration when if they use your product. And the third step is the user cases. How might different people use this product? So comparing from a teenager to an older, you're gonna target people who are older and not teenagers, right? And you want to have that kind of UI and UX, like making your fonts bigger to make older people read them easily, right? Or like defining more stuff, more important stuff, and pulling that bolder colors so they can see better. You just take note of that, and it's just an example. And the end is just the journey maps, is how a user might start and finish the experience. So that's where user flow and user chart is like coming from, like when a user start, like open a product, open a mobile application. They first looked at see a landing page, and maybe they'll end up later on in a dashboard. Okay, let's talk more. But what is brainstorming? So, like I said, it's like how journey maps, but this is user flows. So this is the second step of UX. So user flows is a diagram that outlines the steps that the user might take during the experience as they go from step to step in the UI. So I used Miro. That's one of the software tools I use to make my user flows, or I probably just like sketch it down and like my GoodNote, or just physically sketch it when I'm thinking about it. After you write your user flows, then that's when you goes to your wireframe. So let's say you already know how a user go from your landing page to the home to, I don't know, a search page to their profile to their dashboard to their settings, all the way there. And now you're ready to do your rough skeleton to represent of the UI, so your wireframe. Here's an example I did. I haven't finished it yet, but this is an example I did for my portfolio, my design portfolio. Is what do I want to show the people who want to hire me, right? So I said I want them to know me, like who I am, what I do, what I work, like my works, my design work, and any past experience to show companies, hey, I'm a designer. Um, but this is my design portfolio wireframe. And I had the about me, the design, and the work. And in the about me page, I have my picture and like a summary of like where I come from, like my strength and skills. Anything to let the company or anyone who I want to get hired by know that, hey, I'm a great designer. um, and in here, this is just showing my design work, but it's just all made up in my mind of what I want to show them. And now you're done with your wireframing. Wow, that's a lot. Um, there's a lot that goes with user research. But now it's implementation time. So I give you guys a little sneak peek if you're going into Hack Merced. This is like one of the pages in the live site. So yeah. Um, so I did my wireframe, right? Now it's come to the prototyping. One of the prototyping tools are like Figma, Adobe XD. I should probably already touch on that. And this is where the UI or UX designers create low or high fidelity prototypes. It can be interactive or not, but mostly I want it to be interactive to let the front end developers know of how I want like animations to look like, or how I want the buttons, or like when they submit a button, should it say done or should it say submitted, and what should be like a confetti that they finish in the application. I like doing interactive prototyping because it just makes the website come alive. And that's where front end and back end dev does, is to make your prototype come alive. And once the prototypes are approved, developers will make that prototype a working product. Now, like the the Hack Percent Hub website, it's live right now. Okay, now we're finished and it's been deployed, right? It's in the live site. This is when the final step of user experience stops. It not stops, I mean, still keep going, but usability testing. Observing how your target user will use your product through a variety of means, right? So let's say they want to log in. What if they got an error? Oh, I can't log in. That's when your front end developer, um, well, it ties back to like a cycle, but that's when your front end and web dev say, oh, what happened? Why aren't they connected to their back end? And then there's split testing. You're testing of how your design, your product, or any project you did will iteration over another. So you're just testing with the user to make it better. And it's where analytics reporting comes into place too, is gaining additional insight. And once you know like the errors you made, like for the users, that's when you grow as a designer, is you know how to create more familiar, more easier, more convenient stuff for the users. And you'll know it once you just like keep going and you give people to critique your design or to critique any of your project. And that ties back into like also coding too, is I'm also a front end lead at HackMerced, and when I deploy a HackMerced page, I have to know what can a hacker sign up through our application. Like, what if they cannot? Like, I have to think, oh, what's going on? Like, why aren't they connecting? And it'll just keep going back to the other cycle, just this. So research, brainstorming, implementation, and reporting. It's when you report, and if there's errors, you go back into brainstorming of how to solve that design problem, and then implementing again, and then reporting, and then going back and researching more and brainstorming more to make a better and great quality product for the users. And that's it. Well, hopefully that's it. But this is the time where you guys unmute your mic and like ask me any questions. If there's like any confusion, anything, any design advice you guys want to ask me. And I like how it's mostly like guys, because when I mostly see is like women and UI UX design. But it's great that you guys are really interested in learning design. But do you guys have any more questions? Oh, there's a chat. Do I have a go-to font that I use? So it depends. Like when I'm sending emails, I use Times New Roman. But when I'm creating like prototypes, I use like Montserrat, Bebes New. I love the font Georgia. And there's a lot of like Instagram posts or like a lot in other design community media. They give you like a lot of fonts that goes well together, and you just keep trying until you find the right one that you love. But those are the fonts I like, because I like Montserrat because it looks nice and clean on a website and also on mobile too. It's one of the sans serif, I think, or Open Sans family. But here is like the presentation design is when you're doing your design, you're using free resources. Always give credit to those artists or any resources that you use every time you finish a product. So if you use a free image, like at the end of the stuff knows that where you got that image from. Unless you paid for it, then go ahead. I guess I think the designer would just give you the credit. Um, but yeah, this is the colors used, the free fonts that was used in this presentation, which was Montserrat. Um, also plug, which is a Hackmer said 6 coming up. We just opened our application, and if you're into CSC, any coding, there's free stuff that would come your way if you apply early, and you can register at that link, and it'll occur in March 12th to the 14th, and it'll be 36 hours, so nonstop, no sleep. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's it for my workshop. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. And you can also DM me, like if you're working on a project or any design related, and you want a design critique, then just DM me and I'll help you. And I'll critique your design. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. And soon I'll probably doing like a Figma or Adobe XD software tool, and I'll show you guys how to prototype or wireframe a project. But yeah, thank you guys. And now